Alright, welcome back all you cool cats and kittens. Let's work on triangles today. So this lesson is all about how to classify triangles, and there are two ways that we classify triangles. Those two ways are by the length of their sides and by the measures of their angles. Okay, so two ways. We can classify them in both ways. We know that a triangle is a three-sided polygon, and we know that it also has three angles. So when we look at these different types of triangles, we can name it by the lengths of its sides and by the measures of its angles, not just one or the other. Okay? Alright, so the first side over here is when we classify by the lengths of the sides of the triangle. So the first one that you have here is equilateral triangle, and the thing that I really like about that word is it sounds a lot like equal, and that helps me to remember that all of the sides are going to be congruent, so they're all equal length, which is why equilateral is easy for me to remember. So on this example here, all of the sides are 3 inches. So it has 3 congruent sides. And remember that word congruent, that means same size. Oops. Same size, same shape. So they're exactly the same. Okay? Isosceles triangle has 2 congruent sides. You can look at this one and see that 2 of the lengths are 3 inches and 1 is 2 inches. And then these hash marks right here also mean that this side is congruent to this side. So I like to come up with ways to remember things. So I remember that an isosceles triangle has 2 equal sides, 2 congruent sides, because it has 2 E's for equal or equivalent, 2 congruent sides there. Okay? And then the last type of triangle that we can name by its sides is a scalene triangle. And that's when it has no congruent sides or 0. So all of these have different measures. Okay? So equilateral means that all 3 sides are equal, they're all congruent. An isosceles triangle has 2 congruent sides, and a scalene triangle has 0 congruent sides. They're all different. Okay? So that's one way that we classify triangles. The other way that we classify triangles is by the measures of their angles. So we can talk about right triangles, which we know that in geometry, this little square in the corner means that it's a right angle. And a right angle measures 90 degrees. So a right triangle has one angle that measures 90 degrees. And boys and girls, all of this should be reviewed from 4th grade for you. In fact, my son is in 3rd grade and we worked on some of this stuff, not exactly the same thing, but some of this on some of his work. So this shouldn't be brand new to us, which is why I feel like this is a good unit that I was able to send home for you. Alright, so a right triangle has one 90-degree angle. An acute triangle has 3 acute angles. So an acute angle measures less than 90 degrees. And I'm going to write that right here, measures less than 90 degrees. Okay? So an acute angle measures less than 90 degrees, so all of them are less than a right angle. And then the last one, an obtuse triangle, has one obtuse angle. And an obtuse angle measures more than 90 degrees. So we're going to write that down here. measures more than 90 degrees. Okay? Alright, something else that I want to make sure that we know, and it's probably going to come up somewhere in our work, but I'm not really sure, so I'm just going to go ahead and fill you in on it right now. So I'm going to come down here to the very bottom of my paper, so I've got somewhere to write this. Every triangle has a total of 180 degrees. So every triangle, and I'm just going to draw a triangle for that word, measures 180 degrees. Okay? So every single triangle, doesn't matter what kind it is, it doesn't matter if it's a right triangle, an acute triangle, an obtuse triangle, every single triangle has a total measure of all three angles of 180 degrees, and that's going to be important later for us. Alright, this looks a little blurry for me. Let me see if I can fix it. Oh, that's better. Alright, so our questions down here at the bottom refer back to this top part up here, and I wanted to go over the types of triangles before we really talked too much about this. Okay, so this says, if you look closely at Epcot Center's Spaceship Earth building in Orlando, Florida, you may see a pattern of triangles. And it's kind of hard to see on this dark paper, but you can see like the lighter ones. The triangle outlined in the pattern at the right has 3 congruent sides and 3 acute angles. What type of triangle is outlined? Well, normally I would have you answer that for me, but I can't hear you. So, down here at the bottom, if we are classifying it by its 3 congruent sides, then we know that that is an equilateral triangle. So we're going to write that on the first blank. And then if all of the angles are acute, if it has 3 acute angles, then that means that it has to be an acute triangle. So we would say that these triangles are both equilateral and acute. We could give it both names. Okay? Alright, boys and girls, we're going to flip the page. And this page has some some activities that we don't have materials for, so we're not going to do it. And then flip to the next page. And we're going to do some of the share and show here and talk about these different types of triangles. And then I'm going to leave you on your own for some of it. Okay, so we're going to classify each triangle. And it's either going to be isosceles, scalene, or equilateral. And it's also going to be acute, obtuse, or right. Okay, so we're going to have to look at our sides to decide if it's isosceles, scalene, or equilateral. So I have 6 feet, 7 feet, and 9 feet. Well, all of those are different. So if I don't remember, then I should look back at my page right here. And since none of those sides were congruent, that means that it is a scalene triangle. So I'm going to write scalene. And then all of my angles are different. But what's important here is if my angles are right or obtuse. Because if I don't have a right angle and I don't have an obtuse angle, then that means that all of them are going to be acute. So they're all acute, so it's got to be an acute triangle. Okay? So remember, 90 degrees is the number that we're looking for it to be a right triangle. And then anything over 90 degrees means that it's going to be an obtuse triangle. So since all of these numbers are less than 90, then we're going to say that this is an acute triangle because 51, 87, and 42 are all less than 90 degrees, so it has to be scalene and acute. Okay? So let's come to this one. So this one doesn't have any measurements for us, but remember what I told you about these marks right here? When we have one mark, one mark, one mark, that means that all of those sides are equal lengths. And when we have this mark, and this mark, and this mark, and the mark is the same on all three angles, that means that those three angles are all the same. Okay? So, but let's look at our sides first. So all of our sides are the same measure. So that means that it has to be an equilateral triangle. All three sides are congruent, just like we see on this picture right here. So equilateral. Okay, and then we're going to look at our angles. Okay, so we have three angles right here, and we don't have a measurement for them. So what I told you earlier, this is going to be important here. Remember how I told you that every triangle measures 180 degrees? Well, that means that between these three angles, we have to split 180 degrees evenly. So that means that we have to, divide. So 180 divided by 3, and I'll wait for you to work that out. Good, you should have gotten 60 for that. So that means that each angle is 60 degrees, and 60 is less than 90. So that means that all of those angles are acute. All right, let's look at number 3. So we know that this side is 3 centimeters, and we know that these two sides are congruent. We don't know how long they are, but that's really not important here. It could be any number. We know that it's not 3, but we know that these two are congruent because of these marks. So if we have two sides that are congruent, then that means that we have an isosceles triangle. I think I spelled that wrong. Nope, I got it. Okay, so it's an isosceles triangle. And then we're going to look at our angles. So it looks like both of these are less than 90 degrees, but I'm really not sure. So I'm going to use what I know. And I know that this is 29 degrees. And the total of this has to be 180. So I'm going to use a little math to figure this out. So if I have 180 degrees and I take away these 29 degrees, then we're going to have to borrow from the 8 and make this a 10. So 10 minus 9 is 1. 7 minus 2 is 5, and then 1. Okay, so I have 151 degrees left to split equally between these two. Okay, so I'm going to think about splitting that into two equal groups. And if I round this to 150, because that's, it's really, really close, right? I'm going to think about money. Because anytime I have big numbers like that, I like to think about what I already know. And I know that it takes 6 quarters to make $1.50. And if I split those 6 quarters into 3 groups, or into 2 equal groups, into 2 equal groups, then I'm going to have 75 cents in each group. Are you following me? Okay, good. Alright, so that means that each of my two angles here are going to be about 75 degrees. Doesn't matter if it's exact, because both of those are really far away from 90. They're both less than 90. So that means that, again, I have an acute triangle. Alright, so make sure that you're paying attention on these directions. So just like we did up here, on your own, it's going to have you classified by the sides and by the angles. Make sure that you answer both of those for your triangles. Make sure that you're also looking back at this page if you forget what those words mean. It's right there for you. Okay? And then also down here, it doesn't draw the triangle for you, but it gives you the measurements. I see that 3.5 centimeters and 3.5 centimeters, that's the same thing. So I have two sides that are going to be the same length and one other side. So, what's that going to be? If two sides are congruent, yep, it's going to be isosceles. Okay, so pay attention to that kind of stuff and make sure that you're doing both. And then down here on number 9, it says circle the figure that does not belong and explain why it doesn't belong. As long as you support your answer, there's really not a right or wrong to that, as long as your support is correct. Okay? Alright, if we flip the page, I'm going to say that you can, if you want to, you can do them if you want to, but you can skip number 10. And you can skip this part of Connect to Science. And then I think 13 and 14 are okay. That's what we just worked on. So you can look at these triangles that you see in the pictures, and you can still answer those pretty easily. Okay? And then the next page, just more of the same thing. Okay? So if you have questions, again, email me, text me, dojo message me, call me. You've got my information. I've got it out in a lot of places. If you still need it, I'm going to write my phone number down right now, and you text me or call me, 270-314-4279. That's my number. Call me or text me if you need help. I'm here to help you anytime that you need it. I love you, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.